What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we've got another 2022 NFL mock draft. And with the actual draft just a couple of days away, no better time to reevaluate some of these selections. Since our last mock, there's been some big changes, some more signings, trades, etc. So again, this is going to be really, really interesting, and we will be incorporating trades into this mock. So there's going to be major changes throughout. Make sure to tune in if you enjoy. Hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. And let us hear it in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree with these picks? What do you want to see your favorite team do? I always love going through the comments, so definitely going to be doing that here as well for future mock drafts. But with that being said, let's get right into it. And we start with the Jaguars at the 101 like usual. And here, I think it comes down to two kind of positional groups, either offensive lineman or edge rusher. If it's offensive lineman, I prefer somebody like an Ekwonu. And if it's edge rusher, the consensus is Aiden Hutchinson. Now, again, if it's me making this pick, I would go offensive lineman. You've got a guy that's quote unquote a generational quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. You can never have enough great offensive linemen around him. And yes, the Jaguars added some offensive line help in free agency using the franchise tag there as well. But again, young stud offensive lineman, you can never have enough great players at that position. But, in this mock draft, I want to try and keep it as realistic as possible. And in terms of what I'm hearing that these teams are trending towards doing. And right now, the consensus seems to be Aiden Hutchinson. So that's the way that I'm going to go with this pick. Next, we've got the Detroit Lions. And again, here to me, this pick will either be a quarterback or on the defensive side of the football. And personally, again, I don't think that this quarterback draft class is anything all that special, but guess what? The NFL, that is the most important position. People will overpay for that position. People will reach on that position, and they're going to just, in general, overvalue it. So, no, I wouldn't be shocked here at all if the Detroit Lions go Malik Willis second overall. They've got Jared Goff, and, they can have Malik Willis sit behind him, but again, I think this is a situation where maybe that was a little bit more smoke, and I'm hearing that, the Detroit Lions edge help here, somebody like a Kayvon Thibodeau or a guy that has been rising a lot as of late, Travon Walker from Georgia. I think Kayvon Thibodeau is a little bit more raw. Maybe you could argue has the higher ceiling, maybe has the highest ceiling out of any edge rusher in this draft class. But second overall, maybe you go with that safer prospect. So I'm going Travon Walker here. Then third pick, we've got the Houston Texans. I wouldn't be shocked if they trade down here, but I think it's going to be a steep price to pay for whoever wants to go up to third overall. And honestly, the teams like the Seattle Seahawks, like the Pittsburgh Steelers, Carolina Panthers, they've got other holes on those teams. So you can argue they can't really afford to trade away future picks all that much. So I have the Houston Texans staying put here and going with an offensive lineman. Yes, there's been rumors about Kayvon Thibodeau, about Kyle Hamilton, but if you really believe that, you want to give Davis Mills a chance to be the guy and prove what he can do, I think you got to go offensive lineman here. And specifically, I think the guy that gives you the most flexibility is Ekwonu. So I'm going with Ekwonu third overall. Then for the New York Jets, again, to me, this is a team that has a lot of different needs. And if you've heard kind of the rumors with them, they were trying to give up one of their first round selections, 10th overall, to the Seattle Seahawks for a wide receiver, specifically DK Metcalf. That didn't work out. So obviously wide receiver is a big priority, but they've also got some other needs. Namely, I think a cornerback here in a Sauce Gardner would be a really nice fit. You've got a defensive-minded head coach. And with that being the case, that's kind of the way I'm leaning at this point in time. Again, because when you look at the other teams that are selecting here, How many of them really are going to prioritize wide receiver? Like, it won't be the Giants, it won't be the Panthers, maybe the Falcons, okay, won't be Seattle. So then the Jets are back on the clock. So for that reason, I think they can wait on a wide receiver. And with that being the case, I'm going to Maud Gardner here. Next, we got the New York Giants, and I think this is just an easy slam dunk pick. To me, this is Evan Neal all day, every day. Basically, as long as one of the two top offensive linemen, Ekwonu or Neal, are available, you can pencil in the Giants for one of these guys. So I'm going Evan Neal here. Then we get to the Carolina Panthers. And to me, this is potentially one of the turning points of the draft. And I actually have a trade taking place here because everything you're going to hear is the Panthers quarterback. But don't sleep on the offensive line for the Panthers. Those have been the two positional groups that they've been doing a ton of research on. And I genuinely think they want to improve that offensive line and are okay going into the season with Sam Darnold. And with the top two offensive linemen gone here, maybe you go Charles Cross, but maybe that's a little bit too early. And you don't have all that much draft capital. So why not trade back? And here I'm looking at a team that David Tepper knows well, specifically the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's the connection there. They need a quarterback, definitely. So they potentially leapfrog again teams like Seattle, teams like Atlanta, New Orleans. So I like this. Carolina gets some really much needed draft capital. So I think in order to make this type of trade possible, you obviously give up a second round pick this year and then probably a first rounder next year, or combine it with like a second rounder this year, a fourth rounder, and then like a third rounder this year. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So that's what I'm going to go with here. This way, the Panthers get some decent draft capital, and the Pittsburgh Steelers now are in a great position to get their quarterback of the future because, well, let's be honest, Mitch Trubisky is not that. So we're going with Malik Willis here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, yes, you've got Mitch Trubisky there, but you can, have him do his thing. Malik Willis sits behind him, kind of see the situation play out, and then put in Willis next year or whenever you decide. Next up, we've got the New York Giants back on the clock. First pick, they went with Evan Neal. And I think this is honestly an awesome situation for them here. I think at this point in time, you've got Hamilton, you've got Thibodeau. I guess you can even go back-to-back offensive lineman with Charles Cross. But to me, I think it's going to be too, kind of juicy to pass up Kayvon Thibodeau here. They could use help on the edge. That's what I'm adding. Arguably two of the highest ceiling guys here at their respective positions. So I like this for the New York Giants. Now we are up to the Atlanta Falcons. And again, I think the Atlanta Falcons could go a number of different ways here. They could go with a quarterback, but Malik Willis is off the board. And I do think there's kind of a drop-off afterwards. I don't necessarily love Kenny Pickett or the other quarterbacks after him. So here, I think you kind of just go next best available player. You have needs at wide receiver for sure. So the question becomes, do you go with a guy like a Drake London? Do you go with somebody like a, Garrett Wilson? Who do you prefer? I think with, missing big-bodied physical wide receivers, here you potentially go London. I have him as my number one guy in the draft class. So I'm going London here. Then we've got the Seattle Seahawks. And for Seattle, look, they are a quarterback-needy team. They were kind of sniped by the Pittsburgh Steelers. And now I think they could potentially turn their attention elsewhere. And with that being the case, I'm looking at a local guy in Trent McDuffie here, getting some cornerback help. I have him as arguably the number 2 cornerback because there are question marks about Stingley. You could go offensive lineman as well with a Charles Cross. So those are my 2 potential picks. I'm going with Trent McDuffie However, kind of going with the local guy. And, Washington, well known for producing good secondary players. Then we get back to the New York Jets. And right now, I'm just going back to the wide receiver position. I think it's just makes a ton of sense. Yes, Drake London would have been nice, but you've got a big physical guy in Corey Davis. So why not add somebody like a Garrett Wilson? I think it's either London or Wilson. That's the number one wide receiver for a lot of people out there. So I don't think anyone would be angry about adding Garrett Wilson to the squad here for the New York Jets. Next, we go to the Washington Commanders. What do you do here? I think a pretty good fit for them would be Kyle Hamilton, adding some help to the secondary. I have a feeling like Hamilton is going to be a guy that kind of just slips in the draft. In my opinion, he's somebody that could go top 5 or outside of the top 10, potentially outside of the top 15. So to me, I'm looking at Kyle Hamilton. I'm looking at Charles Cross as well. But the more I think about it, I'm actually leaning Charles Cross. You lost some offensive lineman help in the free agency period. Yes, I realize Cross is a tackle. You kind of need more help at guard and center, but you can never have enough great tackles. I think that they can kind of shuffle around that offensive line. And, you've got Carson Wentz. You got to protect him as much as you can. He's a bit injury prone. You got to give him more time. He's mistake prone. There's a lot of concerns there. So I'm going to go with Charles Cross here to Washington. Then we move on to the Minnesota Vikings. A pairing that I've seen a lot here has been Derek Stingley, and I'm kind of sticking by that. I think arguably he's the third best cornerback in this draft class. We've gotten to that next wave of edge rushers. I think we're still arguably in that tier 1-ish range for cornerbacks. So I'm going Stingley here for the Minnesota Vikings. And then finally here, Houston Texans back on the clock as well. This is where I have Kyle Hamilton's, kind of drop ending. I think this is probably, the lowest he goes. We'll see, there's scenarios where Houston potentially trades back or something like that. But, they've been rumored to take Kyle Hamilton as high as number 3 overall. I just don't think it's a position safety that warrants that selection. But here at pick 13, Hamilton's still on the board. If he makes it past Washington, I think this is a no-brainer of a pick. Now, moving on, we have the Baltimore Ravens. I think they could use some offensive lineman help. I think they could use some D-line help, and then also some secondary help as well. I'm looking at the secondary players that are still left. Andrew Booth Jr. is my next best available guy. That's the way that I'm going to go here. And move on here to the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Eagles, look, they had 3 first-round picks. Now, only down to 2 because they traded away one of those picks to New Orleans, but were able to get some more ammunition in the future. We'll see. Previous to that, I had the Eagles trading up, potentially packaging 2 of those first-round picks to get an impact player in the top 10. But now, I think more so here, you look at the positions of need. I think linebacker is still high up on that list. That's what I'm going to go with here. I think Devin Lloyd, he's been a guy that I've been mocking to the Eagles a lot, and I'm going to stick by it. Next, we've got the New Orleans Saints. And arguably, look, the reason that they traded, a first rounder next year for an extra first rounder this year is because they, are either going to try and package those 2 picks to move up for a quarterback, or because, they think they're just a couple players away and they think that one of the top quarterbacks will be here, then they can potentially get an offensive lineman and be okay, whatever the case might be. And the way this thing is playing out at the moment, I've got Kenny Pickett still available. He's been a guy that's been kind of linked to the New Orleans Saints, the Saints, the Panthers. I think that this is going to be the way it goes. He's my number 2 quarterback after Malik Willis. So let's go with Kenny Pickett here to the New Orleans Saints. Next, we've got the LA Chargers up. And here I actually have another trade taking place. We have got the Dallas Cowboys moving up in order to make a trade here. They're going to send their first rounder this year and then a second rounder as well to move up a couple of spots in order to upgrade their offensive line. So let's see what we have left available in terms of offensive lineman help, because it's kind of concerning. I would say the Cowboys, that strength, that offensive line, they've lost a lot of pieces in free agency, and then just in general taking some hits over the years. And you could argue that that huge strength for them is kind of a liability potentially. And with how much they want to run the football, I think you need to go back and address it. I'm going Trevor Penning here, my next best available offensive lineman. So the Dallas Cowboys address the position here via the draft and trade up. Next, we are back to the Philadelphia Eagles. And again here, they could use some defensive back help. They could use some edge help as well. I think you can make a case for wide receiver as well. But honestly, what I'm going to do here is looking at these picks, I think about it, and Tyler Linderbaum is very, very tempting in my opinion. Kind of have that Kelsey replacement in the future. But I look at the wide receivers for the Philadelphia Eagles, and it leaves a lot to be desired. And here, I'm going to go with a wide receiver. I'm going to go with a high upside wide receiver. I'm going with Jameson Williams of Alabama. Yes, they might have to wait on him a little bit, but Jalen Reagor obviously didn't pan out. I like the potential for Devonta Smith, and when Williams comes back, you can argue that he's the 1B to Devonta Smith 1A. I think they can wait to afford to wait on Williams. They're not exactly in an amazing division, so I think they'll be in contention regardless. So I'm going Jameson Williams here. Next, we go to the New Orleans Saints one more time. And like I said before, I think, potentially the Saints think they're just a couple players away. And with that being the case, quarterback, offensive line help makes a lot of sense. Yes, Jameis Winston is going to be back, but I still think they're going to want their quarterback of the future. They do that with somebody like a Kenny Pickett. And now going back to the offensive line position, obviously they, lost Armstead in free agency. That's a huge loss. I think they can take a chance on somebody like a Reinman here. A little bit raw, but, I believe in what the Saints have in terms of coaching staff. They can get him to where he needs to be. So I'm going to go with Reinman here for the New Orleans Saints. Now we go back to the Carolina Panthers. If you remember, they traded back with the Pittsburgh Steelers, added some more draft capital, which I think was huge for them. And now quarterback, Pickett is gone. Malik Willis is gone. Corral is still there. They've been rumored to potentially have, had meetings with him, be interested in him. But I'm going to offensive line here. Specifically, I'm going Linderbaum. I think he is the best center in this entire draft class. I think that the Panthers don't really have a long-term solution at the center position. And honestly, I think if it wasn't for the fact that he's a center, Linderbaum is one of the best offensive linemen in this draft class. You can never go wrong with an Iowa offensive lineman. I'm going Linderbaum here for the Carolina Panthers. Then we have got the New England Patriots. In my opinion, they've got a lot of needs here. So if a team were to call with a potential, trade offer, I definitely think the Patriots would listen. That's definitely up kind of their, alley. So here, the team that I have kind of calling them is the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs have 2 picks in the first round, thanks to the fact that they traded away Tyreek Hill. So I'm going to have them moving pick 29 along with a third rounder, along with end of the second round pick, and a late third rounder on top of that to make this trade go through. And this way, the Kansas City Chiefs are able to leapfrog a couple teams that are going to be in need of wide receiver help. And, look, yes, you signed Juju Smith-Schuster, but, is he going to be the answer at that position for a long term? I'm not sure. So now instead, the Kansas City Chiefs can definitely guarantee they get someone. And I'm looking at the positions, or I should say the players that are left. I really like Chris Olave here for them. He's a guy that potentially could offer a lot of the things that Tyreek Hill did. So I like him here. Doesn't necessarily have to produce right away. I still think that the Chiefs are going to be okay with Travis Kelce, with Juju Smith this year, and Patrick Mahomes distributing it. But I still really like Olave as an addition to the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, we go to the Green Bay Packers, and obviously after trading away Devontae Adams, wide receiver is going to be a huge area of need. I'm not going to overthink this one. I'm going to go with a wide receiver, a big physical guy. I like Treylon Burks here for them. Yes, you probably would have preferred somebody like a Drake London, but no way he's dropping down to 22. And I just don't think that the Packers are going to be trading up, but we'll see. Next up, we have got the Arizona Cardinals. They've got all this drama with Kyler Murray going on, but I still don't think he's going to be traded or anything like that, in the next 2 weeks. So with that being the case, I'm looking at the areas of need. The offensive line has been an area of need for, I feel like, several years with the Arizona Cardinals. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and address it. Anytime you can add some help, and protect your franchise quarterback in Kyler Murray, that's a good thing. So I'm going to address the guard position here with a guy in Zion Johnson from Boston College. So let's add him to the Arizona Cardinals. Next up, we've got the LA Chargers. And for them, I think this breaks it in a great way. Jordan Davis is still available. I probably would have had them selecting him back with the 17th pick overall. So to me here, this is a slam dunk pick for them. Addresses an area of need. Next, we've got the Buffalo Bills. They've got Stephon Diggs, who they just gave an extension to. There's a lot of different ways they can go. They can add some help in the secondary. Also, add some help in the trenches. That's kind of what I have here in Devontae Wyatt. So the two defensive tackles from Georgia going back-to-back here. First to the Chargers, then to the Buffalo Bills. Then we get to the Tennessee Titans here. And again, I think the Titans are in a situation where, look, a wide receiver, you traded for Robert Woods, so not a huge area of need. You can never have enough great edge rushers. That's something to consider. Jermaine Johnson is still available. I think that he's somebody that could go as high as a top 10 pick. So, I think at this point in time, he's an absolute steal for the Tennessee Titans. Just kind of the way this thing played out in this mock, there was a focus on the offensive linemen and the wide receivers, and then some quarterbacks going off the board. So the Tennessee Titans definitely get very, very lucky. They add Jermaine Johnson here. Next, we go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Look, Tom Brady's back. Bruce Arians is out. They could use some help at the guard position, and that's what I'm going to do right now. They were hit at that position in free agency. I'm going with Kenyon Green here for them. You got to protect Tom Brady. It's as simple as that. Then we've got the Green Bay Packers back on the clock, and look, they went wide receiver first. Now, I think it would just make a lot of sense to go with, an offensive lineman. It might seem just like too obvious of a pick, but sometimes, that's the way it goes for a reason, because those are just areas of need, and they have to be addressed. There have been losses at those positions. That's the case for the Packers. Definitely a wide receiver and offensive lineman. And you gotta keep Aaron Rodgers upright. You gotta give him time to find legitimate targets. So after addressing the wide receiver position, let's add some offensive lineman help here with Darian Kinnard. Now, the New England Patriots back on the clock here, and they could go a number of different ways. They really do have just a lot of areas of need, from wide receiver, maybe a smaller need now that they traded for Devontae Parker. So we'll ignore that. but edge rusher, linebacker, cornerback, definitely some cornerback help would be welcome in my opinion. Linebacker, somebody like a Nakobe Dean, but I do think that they're probably going to prioritize an edge rusher here a little bit more so. George Karlaftis is still available. He just seems like one of these prototypical guys that Bill Belichick takes advantage of for slipping. Not a sexy name, but he kind of just develops and is a stud in New England. I'm going Karlaftis here for the New England Patriots. Now we have got the Kansas City Chiefs back on the clock here again after they traded up to get Olave. So wide receiver kind of taken care of. You did lose a pretty big leader in the secondary in the Honey Badgers. So, this would be a time where I think going somebody like Lewis Kine makes a lot of sense kind of as that replacement. So that's what I'm going to go with here. Then we get to the Cincinnati Bengals. And right now, I actually think the Bengals did an all right job in free agency addressing the offensive lineman position. I'm looking at some of the linemen that are left. I think, at tackle, some of these guys would be considered a reach. I think some of the top guards have been, selected as well. So I'm going to go with another area that I think it's kind of flying under the radar, cornerback for them. They had some issues in the Super Bowl. I think that somebody like Akir Elam is going to be a nice addition for them here. So I wouldn't be shocked. Sure, if there's a really decent offensive lineman that's dropped, it would make a lot of sense for Cincinnati. But with a secondary position, I think second cornerback help, DB help, makes a lot of sense. Now we go back to the Detroit Lions here. And since they're going to be picking in a couple of selections here, they went with a defensive end with their first pick, Travon Walker. They could go quarterback, but chances are, look, probably Jacksonville isn't going to take a quarterback. Yes, there could be a trade up there, but maybe there's a couple guys they like at that position. Nakobe Dean is still available, and I think that's tremendous value at this point in time. So I'm going with Nakobe Dean here to kind of round out this first round and conclude it here for the Detroit Lions. But with that, we wrap up this first round mock. We introduced some trades in this thing, and don't worry, we're going to have even more of them in our next mock draft as we get closer to the actual thing. As always, let me hear it in the comment section. What did you think about the way we had this thing play out and how your favorite team did? If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. In the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.